This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Dumpster Diving, where we sift through the pop culture detritus and look for something good and rarely find it.
Yeah, today is a great example of not finding it.
Yep.
Oh, my wife is actually right next to me. Do you want to say hi, my dear?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, you met her. Okay.
What? Yes. Have you met her before?
I thought you were talking to me. Yeah, we've met a couple times. That's a shout out to someone that doesn't listen to this show, I'm sure.
I would hope not. And I don't really care for that person.
Yeah. Very kinky hair.
Whoa, that's a weird way to describe someone. I think your dad had a very specific description.
Oh, it's true. So anyway.
Oh, your dad's made both episodes so far. Good for him.
Yeah. Oh, shout out to you in the ground, dude.
Jeez.
Anyway, so
he's not going to be on that game because you already know the answer.
This yeah, that's true. Hardcore gay. This
for some reason.
This this episode we're talking about Buffregard. Is that her full name? Buffregard the Vampire Slayer?
I have no idea. It never occurred to me that her name isn't Buffy. I guess it could be short for something.
I think it's what's the name that starts with B? Barbara. I think it's Barbara.
Oh, I don't know.
It's Barbara the Vampire Slayer, but they call her Buffy for short.
That's fair.
It's Christy Swanson, not Nicole Eggert in the movie. I know that. Yeah,
I think it was a big deal when it came out because Paul Rubens made a cameo in it, but I've never actually seen that. And isn't Luke Perry in there in some way? Is he the protagonist? I don't know.
Well, he's the love interest or whatever.
Well, no, he's the guy, so he's clearly the character I'm rooting for.
But my wife,
a woman protagonist.
My wife, what? Next thing,
there's gonna be a different word for that.
Next thing you'll tell me is that Asians are allowed to be in movies. Oh,
they are. I looked it up for Rick.
Right. But anyway, so my wife loves this show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and my wife.
Oh, just an updated me. I'm not drinking any more news. I switched to whiskey.
Oh, good. You switched from nothing to whiskey.
Well, I had those Corditas, and it's a very steep slope.
Oh yeah, for sure. But anyway, so she really likes this show. She watched this episode with me, and she didn't really remember it. And at the end of the episode, she goes, "Yeah, that was a really terrible episode of this show." So even her, a super fan, was like, "Yeah, this is not a good episode."
I'm not familiar at all with the show, but I think it does have a monster of the week / a running through line of what's happening sort of scenario. Is that correct?
That makes sense to me. Despite her prodding, I've only seen actually 2 episodes of the show. But yeah, based on the 2 episodes I've seen, or 3 episodes now, the 3 episodes I've seen, that makes a lot of sense. Apparently Seth Green was in this show. I didn't even realize.
I think I'm kind of aware of this a little bit, and mostly it's because of my favorite moment in the show, which came very early, is the theme song.
Yes, the
Buffy the Vampire Slayer theme song is played by one of my, I'd say it's got to be one of my top 5, if not top 3 favorite bands on Nerf.
Yeah.
It's a really cool, kick-ass theme song. I did watch an episode of this before a long time ago, and it was just because Nerf Herder was in the episode.
Oh, okay.
It was one of the last episodes. Then they made a comment oh, if these guys are, playing here, it must be the end of the world. And, everyone laughed so hard, probably.
They laughed so hard, they busted a gut, literally.
That fucking wordsmith, Joss Wheaton.
Right. My wife says that they feature many bands in the show because there's a point in the show where Seth Green, who apparently is a werewolf, although we never get to see it, and Allison Hannigan from How Do I Know If I'm Really in Love, or How I Met Your Mother, or whatever.
The American Pie movies. She's on Penn and Teller bullshit. I think she's very attractive. My wife, I mentioned this to her. She doesn't understand it, but I've always found her cute. But I don't like the way she speaks. Like it's almost like an American Pie. Like, oh, and then I saw a werewolf, and the werewolf like that annoys me so much.
But anyway, they go to a thing at the little club or whatever, and there's a band singing there. The lead singer of the band's name is Veruca, and if 1997 was a person, that's what this lead singer would be. She's got
If Beverly Hills 90210 and a callback to one of your other 500 shows you do,
right.
If the Beverly Hills 90210 had stayed on the air and was super current, she would be a character on that show.
Absolutely. But she's making eyes. She's making eyes at Seth Green for some reason. I don't know. He looks like a midget even in the
She has a leprechaun fetish.
Yeah. Seriously, there has never been a human being more perfectly suited to play a leprechaun. Oh God, he's even got the ears for it. But the main plot of the show, I guess.
But he's the world's least threatening werewolf.
Yeah, seriously, the main plot of the show, I guess, is that Buffy had sex with some dude named Parker, and she's trying to get over it. And there's these guys. There's these Goodwill Hunting guys.
No, I don't know if they're actual frat boys, but they definitely have the same, kind of like character.
Yeah, and they're certainly like oh, just talk about inherited wealth and all this shit, geopolitical. It's so obviously inspired by Goodwill Hunting because I think it came out around the same time.
And one of them, as you mentioned earlier, is played by Cal Penn. One of his earlier roles, it must be. I don't know. The first thing I saw in was Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, he looks super young.
He played Kumar.
Yeah, he did. That's true. But he's part of it too, and they're all like drinking beer, Black Forest beer, because that's the best beer or whatever. And Buffy decides that she's going to drink with them. And this beer has some sort of weird effect on
Which
them.
is a story that sounds like the beginning of a testimony in a courtroom.
Yes.
So there I was with 5 guys drinking beer.
This whole thing is super weird.
Not that I'm blaming the woman in this case.
Right. But this whole thing is super weird because she goes and drinks beer with them. The next day, she's clearly dumber. She's sitting at the TV and she's like, oh, people, shiny, whatever. And they just chalk it up to a hangover, which I've never seen a hangover make someone's IQ plummet. But whatever.
Oh my God, I think I've had a couple of those.
And then...
Like this one time I had a hangover, it was like someone had like jabbed a very slender blade directly into my forehead, like a few inches. I couldn't. It was the worst thing ever. Then I drank some Sunny Delight and good to go.
There's so little action in this episode that we have to have 2 dream sequences that are back to back that are the exact same sequence. They just reused the footage.
And if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I was not paying a lot of attention to this episode. It did not captivate me in any way. There's a lot of snippets I saw and some very dumb. Well, go ahead. I'll explain what I hated about the parts I paid attention to.
But it's edited together really weird. So like they're drinking this beer. Like I said to my wife at one point, I'm like, it'd be cool if something happened in this episode because we were like I don't know, like 15 minutes into the 45-minute episode, nothing's really going on except for Buffy saying like, oh, I wish that Parker would want to date me, but now he wants to fuck some other girl after having a one-night stand with me. And it's like, yeah, it's college, Buffy, get over it.
And there was a funny, like not funny, but I was kind of surprised it was so risque. Like when she like met her friends after drinking with a guy, she's like, oh, it wasn't a group sex type situation or something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those hilarious misunderstandings where she's like, Buffy's like, yeah, I drank a bunch of beer with these 5 guys, and then like I don't remember exactly what she says, but it makes it sound like maybe she went home with them, and she
so her friend briefly thinks she had a gangbang last night.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, ow. She goes, are you sore or something? She says, and then she's like Buffy's going through what happened in the night, and she's like, and then that's when the group sex happened, and she goes, what? No. But yeah, that was the one part that I thought was pretty funny. But then we get a small snippet of a guy mixing these chemicals together in like this elaborate, would only see it on TV, like chemistry setup where like every tube.
I don't think the Breaking Bad chemistry set was this elaborate.
Yeah, it's so dumb, and like so it's dripping out this little enzyme or whatever into the beer. And by the way, they can't be the only people drinking this beer, but they're the only ones that we see affected by it. It
looks like a very professional operation with the packaging alone.
Yeah. I
don't think they're making it for one bar.
Her stupid friend Xander is working at this bar, and the guy that owns the bartender that owns the place or whatever. I just
realized I'm 100% incorrect on what I just said.
Why? What were you wrong?
Because it is being made by this one bartender / owner guy because he knows a warlock.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. He just casually says, "My brother-in-law's a warlock" or something. Like, how many? Yeah. Is this a world where people just know vampires and shit exist?
Yeah, that's what I don't know. I mean, is it just a small circle of friends who are like almost like? Do you ever watch True Blood?
I've seen a couple episodes of that too, but
I don't know why, but that seems like a show Carol would really like.
I think she liked it. She likes a lot of vampire stuff.
Yeah, but in that, they're all aware that like the supernatural exists. I mean, is that what's happening in here? I really don't. Is it like a Dresden, like that detective series thing? I have no idea.
I get the impression that it's a secret.
That's what I would think.
But who knows? I don't know. I'd have to ask Carol about that, I guess. But
also, I want to mention here that I hate the vampires in this. Like, they just have like a really dumb-looking face when they're a vampire.
Yes. Well,
it's like the worst depiction of a vampire I've ever seen. Why do they have a different face?
Well, I don't think they're. So if you're talking about the frat guys, they're not actually.
No. I'm not talking about them. I think earlier when she's fighting.
Oh yeah.
One of her multiple dream sequences.
Yeah, I don't get that either. They do look super weird. But
we really should have had Carol on here to defend, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because we know that someone needs to defend a famous franchise, right? Kristen,
right? Yeah, exactly. What pansies of us?
I love that word,
pansy.
Fucking pansy.
What are you, a mangina?
Even worse, he's a pansy.
I'm surprised he didn't call me a cuck or something like that.
Well, good for him, I guess, that he didn't say that.
But anyway, so that's
like another layer of dumb. It's like a deeper layer of stupidity.
Yeah, absolutely. But so this whatever he's putting into this beer, that he's mixing in a chemistry set, but is also like I guess blessed by a warlock. I don't know. It's turning people into cavemen. They have a conversation in their psychology class at the beginning that I think is supposed to tie in, where the professor's like, oh, it's the id, and the id just wants whatever it wants, and then it gets into conflict with the ego. And
by the way, the id is not a different species of human being.
Right. But I think it's supposed to be like, oh, they're only going by their id because they're turning into cavemen or whatever. I don't know. That's what they look like. They drink this beer and they're like suddenly they transform, and then they go up to Xander, I assume, to ask him if he wants to save money by switching to Geico, because that's exactly what they look like to me, is the Geico cavemen.
Right.
And that's as good as the makeup is on this.
Yeah, and this guy's like trying to rip them off because he could tell that this guy's the worst barkeep ever. Like, he would probably have so many lawsuits. He's like, well, you're really drunk. You better leave.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And he tries to fool them out of money. I mean, what kind of a person tricks somebody into overpaying for alcohol or something that they say is alcohol but it actually isn't? What a fucking douchebag.
Yeah, I agree. But anyway, so they go out in the night, and then they see two women walking down in a scene that has not aged very well. They're on a college campus and they see two women starting to walk, and then they run after them as these women run away. Those women 100% got raped that night.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's an awful looking scene.
Well, Joss Whedon apparently is kind of a rapey himself, so that makes sense.
That's what I've heard, but allegedly. But
oh no, he actually apologized for it, which makes it okay.
Yeah, because he's not a hypocrite, and that's the worst part.
The funny part about that, though, is people really do concern themselves more with the hypocrisy than the actual
Yeah, that's one of the brilliant parts of the joke.
Which is, yeah, it's weird too, because people are if it's oh, I'm sorry, I should have said all those things, I apologize. If they're sincere about it, and you can tell when they're sincere, generally, people understand because I make mistakes. Yep. I mean, I don't Louis C.K. lock women in rooms and whack off in front of them mistake, but I
don't make those mistakes.
I don't mean in that nature at all. Not the sexual harassment mistakes. Not that I'm a perfect person, but I mean when you make a mistake, people understand because everyone makes mistakes.
Sometimes I say for all intensive purposes instead of for all intended purposes.
That is a mistake. You should apologize.
I mean, it's not quite as bad as locking women in a room and whacking off in front of them, but it's
generally, again, it's such a weird. Okay, we're back to rape again. Sorry, it's such a weird thing. I mean,
let me tell you about 9/11.
Yeah, and we got to mention AIDS at one point.
Right? Yep.
We'll tie it all together. The vampires, they have AIDS real bad.
Right. Oh, if a vampire sucked the blood of someone that had AIDS? Well, I guess they're undead, so that would be okay, huh?
Well, see, I think the question is how completely do they suck the blood? Do they like mosquitoes, but a little bit better? I have to say, I'm shocked that mosquitoes do not spread AIDS. I mean, it must be a bigger quantity of blood, or how do they not pass it on?
Yeah, I remember in the 80s that was a worry that somebody brought up, but I mean, thank God they don't.
Well, I don't understand why they don't, because don't they spit up a little blood when they take your blood?
Yeah, maybe they don't carry it, or like you said, they can't carry it for some reason. Maybe it's too large. I don't know.
Maybe you get a bigger viral payload than what you're getting from the tiny bit they put in you.
Yeah, it's possible.
I need to look this up. I'm very curious about this because I don't understand how that works.
I don't either. But so these dudes, they end up with the women that they raped, and Willow, which is the girl from American Pie.
Allison Hannigan.
Yeah, and Parker. They end up with all of them together at this place where they start a fire, even though earlier someone held up a lighter to them and they said fire bad, but they were making a fire anyway too. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I have to say right here, as far as monsters go, the least scary monster is a fucking caveman.
Right.
And another thing is, this isn't historically accurate, I don't think. I don't know about Cro-Magnon specifically, which they really do seem to hone in on that specific iteration of man.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, Neanderthals, and I know that's an incorrect way to say it, but to say it correctly, you sound like a fucking douchebag. Right. Neanderthal? Fuck you. Right. I've heard Neanderthal my whole life, only in the past 10 years. Tall. It's well, spell it that way.
Yeah, only Louis C.K. would lock people in a room and saying Neanderthal.
Yeah, but I mean, some people think that they were actually more intelligent than Homo sapiens. Mm-hmm. And if this was Kevin Smith's movie, Homo would be like, "What do you mean, homo?" And we'd laugh a lot. But I mean, some people think that they had larger heads and their brains were larger. Mm-hmm. I think what makes us especially intelligent is the connections between different parts of the brain.
Yes.
Whether or not some people think they may have been more intelligent than us. So this is not accurate in that sense. Which the average Buffy the Vampire Slayer is really concerned about. Right. But I mean, which is weird because it almost implies that the reason that our species is more successful is because we are more aggressive and violent, and that seems completely accurate to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I honestly think the only reason we survive have survived is because for much of our history we've just been super aggressive and violent, and the ability to use tools and make weapons.
Yeah, which is a lot more thought. than the producers put into, or the writers put into this episode. But they start a fire, and then Buffy's able to fulfill her fantasy by saving this dude
Yeah, somewhere Phil Hartman was shuddering in his grave when they said fire bad like 500 times.
Oh yeah. And then she hits him on the head 3 times with this big log. Basically she murders him because
She murdered him.
there's no way that third time he didn't suffer a cerebral hemorrhage. He just got hit in the head 3 times with a blunt object in quick succession after inhaling smoke.
And what's funny and tells you a little bit about this show slash the actress is that Sarah Michelle Gellar, even though she drank as much beer almost as these Cro-Magnon men, she didn't go through the makeup process.
No, she didn't.
Like, I kind of teased it, like you only saw the back of her head. She had like some crazy like braid or something, but she didn't put on this makeup. Where these guys probably had to sit through like 8 hours for this fucking terrible ass makeup.
Yeah, seriously, poor Kumar had to Cal-Penn had to sit in the fucking chair for hours. He looks so young. He looks like a baby.
Yes, and I think I like Cal-Penn. He's interesting. He obviously left acting, which who would leave acting? Which, I mean, how hard do you have to struggle to be an actor that people know and you make a good amount of money at?
Right.
To join the Obama administration, and he left in the middle of House, which at some point we'll get to, I assume.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they killed his character off. I like people like that who just don't give a fuck. They're just very interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. He just did what he wanted to do, and
it's easier if you have like billions of dollars, but still, he's walking away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. What's I can't remember now. Oh yeah, I was watching John Mulaney and Nick Kroll do that whatever wired autocomplete interview, where it's like the laziest interview ever. They just whatever people Googled about them, so they don't have to come up with questions. And one of them was to Nick Kroll, "Are you rich?" And he's like, well, not only do I act in a lot of movies and TV shows and everything where I get a pretty good salary, but I also come from a wealthy family. And just the look on his face is hilarious.
Yeah, I actually I have a theory that's why I don't think Nick Kroll's that funny, because I don't think he ever really had to struggle that much.
No, not at all.
Yeah, his father, I think, owns like a investigative service, Kroll Investigations, which is like a very highly touted multimillionaire type company. Mm-hmm. And John Mulaney, I think his father is like an attorney or like a judge.
His mom and dad both, yeah.
Yeah, in Chicago, so he's probably, he probably also grew up in. I think John Mulaney's kind of funny. Some things he says, but I really hate his stupid. I don't know if it's intentional. I'm sure it's intentional. I hope for his wife's sake that it's intentional. His affect on his voice.
Oh yeah. The North Atlantic accent, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I understand that as part of the concept of his comedy, but I think he's kind of funny. I wouldn't say he's like a top tier comedian, in my opinion.
You're not as big of a fan as I am of him.
No, I've seen things he does that I find funny. Like, the Law and Order thing was pretty funny. And he's talked about like how he was like giving a speech in front of Bill Blasso and like Lorne Michaels is there. I don't know if you heard that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think he's not my favorite.
Well, he's not my favorite, but I like him a lot.
He's probably not my top 10 either. I've watched his specials. I watched actually. Do you know who Bert Kreischer? You've mentioned him before, Bert Kreischer. I saw his most recent special. I don't think he's that funny. And after watching the most recent special, I maintain that opinion.
I haven't seen it yet, but I saw that it was on Netflix, and like you, even comedians that I'm not a big fan of, I'll give them a shot and watch their special and just like you said, just kind of being like a student of comedy. It's interesting even to watch stuff that doesn't really, especially stand-up. Movies can be really painful, but especially stand-up, it's interesting to watch something that doesn't work and kind of figure out like, oh, this is why this doesn't work.
Yeah, and what's even stranger to me is there's a large audience and they're all laughing pretty enthusiastically, but it just does nothing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really found him funny in the past, but I am going to watch it and see.
And I feel that he like makes things up or just exaggerates them, like his whole Russian train thing. I don't think that actually happened. At least not in the way he says.
I agree.
And also, I don't know if you heard his Anne Frank thing, like the flying dildos is what they call it. That also seems made up to me.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Also, Bert Kreischer, wealthy family.
Wow. Yeah, I think you got to struggle. You got to struggle at least a little bit.
Another comedian I don't think that's funny from a wealthy family, Chris D'Elia.
Oh yes, yep, I agree with that too.
The one thing I like him on, and he was on Workaholics. He played a pedophile, which was hilarious.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, we should watch that as a. I mean, Workaholics is hit or miss to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that episode, it was called to watch a predator, to befriend a predator.
Okay.
That's a funny fucking episode, and he's like a pedophile, and they go to the penthouse instead of the Playboy Mansion.
Oh god. Okay.
They're like, oh yeah, you can pee on the floor there.
I've never actually seen an episode of that show Workaholics, so I would definitely be down for it.
Maybe we could watch that one after we watch the, I Love You, Justin Bateman joint.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sorry. Back to Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
She murders a guy and then the show ends.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. I always hear people praise Joss Whedon. I know you wrote on Roseanne. Roseanne's a show that I think is very funny. My wife watches it all the time. Mm-hmm. Hilarious show. If you were looking for a vintage show that you've never watched, I think it still stands up today. Maybe not the last couple seasons, but it's very funny. Mm-hmm. I think Joss Whedon comes from like a family of like famous writers. Is that correct?
Yeah, his dad wrote on. I want to say his dad wrote either on the Smothers Brothers.
Was British. Oh, maybe not.
I think he wrote on the Smothers Brothers or like Your Show of Shows or something like that. He wrote on one of the like the classic like variety shows of the day.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but I think his grandfather is British or something, and I think he also is a TV writer. So he's like a third-generation TV writer. If I'm not, I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
I always hear people praise him, like, "Oh, look, it's Joss." I mean, he has a following. He did like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know if he did did he do the movie as well? I had imagined.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, which I heard sucked. He did Dollhouse. He did a lot of stuff. Dollhouse is like obviously the worst example because who knows what that is. Did he do Firefly?
Yes, he did.
So he's in a lot of stuff that people really love. Everything I've watched of his, I think is terrible. It's not good. It's not fun. But I mean, if even judging this one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's so bad. There's nothing that makes me interested in this show at all. Every time I've seen an episode, which I said has only been a couple, this one and the Nerfer one where they're in it, they're so bad. I don't get the obsessive following. No offense to Carol, but I don't get why people like this show. It does nothing for me. It leaves me completely unaffected in any way, and any good art should affect you in some way, good or bad.
Right. The one thing that I've seen him do that I really enjoyed, because I've never seen the Firefly or Serenity or whatever it's called, and I haven't seen Dollhouse. Like I said, I've seen a couple episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I saw the.
I know did he do the Avengers too?
Oh, he did.
Or he directed, maybe.
He he didn't write it. Well, he probably wrote some of the jokes. And there's a little, one of the criticisms I have of that movie is there's a little of everyone's a little bit too clever. I think Joss Whedon falls into that trap.
Snappy patter kind of thing, like almost like Aaron Sorkin. But I think Aaron Sorkin works, whereas I don't think Joss Whedon does work. Like Aaron Sorkin, like it's obviously like attempting a highbrow like level of like a TV show, like sports. What was it called?
Sports Night.
Sports Night, and obviously The West Wing. Just watch it. You might as well call it snappy pattern. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean it's clever writing. The characters are intelligent, which is needed on TV because look at all these fucking dumbass sitcoms that are out there.
But the one thing I've watched of Joss Whedon's that I really liked was Cabin in the Woods.
See, I didn't like that.
Yeah, I know you didn't like it.
Even though Chris Hemsworth was in there. What do you think Danny DeVito would say if he was in Cabin in the Woods? They're at that cabin in the woods.
Well,
that's better.
We got to get out of this. We got to get. That's more Matt Damon. We got to get out of this cabin.
That's not bad. I think that's your sentence. Work with. We got to get out of this cabin, and then say Angela at the end.
Angela.
Tony Danza. That's not far off. You do a good Tony Danza.
Yeah, Tony Danza.
That's close.
Angela. Yeah.
Oh, we're almost there. We gotta get out of this cabin, Angela. Try it. Danny DeVito, go.
We gotta get out of this cabin, Angela.
That was perfect. That worked. We've got it. We've got the Danny DeVito.
Well, that is Cabin in the Woods. That's Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Can you do the rest in the Danny DeVito accent, please?
So we'll see you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See you next time.